We have heard about content marketing.
Mm-hmm.
What is context marketing?
So, it was our way of saying every touch point that you have with a customer provides a context for us to do some form of content marketing. And we should take this crazy serious. It's something that came naturally to me personally, but it translated into a DNA on everything we did in terms of touch points. So let me actually give you tangible. I'll give you tangible examples. Okay. At that point, it was a sales team in the US who would go attend events, and either they would sponsor an event or they would walk the floor as an attendee and go and try to buttonhole a speaker or somebody who was head of social at Kraft, for example. So let's assume head of social at Kraft has come down to speak at a conference in New York, and our salesperson has bought a ticket to go attend that conference. So if the salesperson gets to meet that person, first thing is you need to obviously be hired for people who can hold conversations, or pleasant or comfortable having these conversations about brands, who worked in companies. So they can hold a conversation, but in a thing where about 10 other people want to talk to this person and buttonhole them during the coffee break, you need to stand out. So what's the first thing you do? You're going to say, hey, I'm from a company called Unmetric. And there itself, there's what's Unmetric, right? What we talked about earlier, there's a certain curiosity factor. And then you give your business card. There was a time when people met it feels ancient to say this, people met in person and exchanged business cards without fear of transmission of anything besides information. So you give a business card. I think you've probably seen it. All our business cards were transparent. They were printed in plastic. They were transparent. And the business card simply said, for example, in my card would say lux@unmetric.com. And it would have two arrows next to the unmetric.com and say that's our website. It would have these two measurement arrows between @unmetric, which say that's our Twitter handle, against the entire thing and say that's our email. So your email, your Twitter handle, and your website is captured in your email ID. And then it would be a transparent card. And they get all these paper cards which look different. And this one had a funky design and arrows all around it, and it was transparent. And the guy, it had a tactile feel. So this was the first piece of content that you gave someone in a meeting. And the context was introducing yourself. A person sees it, he's already got a certain amount of curiosity saying, what is this, right? And then we had a standard repertoire of jokes saying, don't leave it on the table because you'll forget it since it's transparent. Or things like, we won't give you the spiel about why we are a very transparent data company and everything. And so we had a bunch of interesting narratives you could say around that, which then tells this person, oh, this company is interesting, this person is interesting, I should know more. It also helps because when this person calls up for a follow-up a week later, and the guy says, Jenna, who? And he says, Jenna with the transparent business card from Unmetric. Yes, I remember you. So there is a certain amount of recall that comes from that. So that's what I meant by a business card is content in the context of your first meeting with a person. The next thing we would do in those events is that since this person is from Kraft, we know he's interested in food and beverages. So what we would have done is our team in Chennai would have created a customized deck of about 20 slides with the social media habits of large food and beverage brands in the US. That's the title that it says in the cover. Prepared specially for XYZ John Daniel of Kraft. And would have his little picture on that, slightly corny in retrospect, but it was like, we made this for you. And it would be printed on paper. It would be spiral bound with a transparent first sheet so that the person could, through the sheet, see his name. It's also because so that they can't tear the entire thing and throw it off somewhere. You have to hold that physical copy. And once it's printed, the team in Chennai would actually arrange for that to be printed in a Kinko's outlet here in the US, close to where Jenna is. And she would go and pick up the slide decks and we'd create one like this for every single speaker at these conferences. So Jenna would walk into that with a bag that weighs about 5 kilos because it's got a whole bunch of decks for all these people that she hopes to buttonhole, give her a card, introduce herself, have a pleasant conversation and say, oh, by the way, my colleagues and I created this specially for you. And the guy sees something that weighs about 600 grams and has his mugshot on it. And it's a report about his industry created specifically for him. And then she'd say, when you're flying back to Chicago or something, we thought you might enjoy reading this. Sitting on his table, people come into his office, they look at it, they pick it up, they flip through it, he gives it to somebody. So that period, events, maximizing and squeezing as much juice as possible from physical offline events was a large part of how we evangelized the product in the first couple of years.
Okay. So this is the context marketing that we were talking about.
This is for the context of one-to-one conversations.